Our next presentation is from Clemson University. As you will recall from earlier discussions this morning, Clemson is the primary university that received the grant from the EAC as a result of the congressional mandate to do something on this subject. And they, in turn, engaged all of the partners that you've heard from so far and those that were identified earlier in the presentation. Wanda Eugene is in charge of the research voting project for Clemson and a recent brand new PhD. So she is going to talk to you now about the research. She'll say that over and over again. I've heard her presentation before, it's great. She's going to talk to you about the research that Clemson is doing in this regard and about the Prime 3 voting system that Clemson has developed. The nice thing about it, get your attention, it's free. Here's Wanda.
All right, good afternoon. I'm really bad at standing in one place, so I'm gonna have to move with this. I'm kind of like antsy little kid sometimes. All right, my name is Wanda Eugene, as he stated. I am part of Juan Gilbert's Prime 3 team in the Human-Centered Computing Lab at Clemson University. That is changing, but currently that's where we're situated. And along with our partners as part of the Accessible Voting Grant, we design and develop innovations in voting technology. The problem with accessible voting, as you kind of can tell from the talks today, that it's not a small task. It's not a very easy undertaking. And so along with our partners, we've made great strides in the past 3 years under this grant, but there's a lot more work to do. And as you've seen with some of the questions generated, in some situations we generated more questions than answers in our attempt to kind of figure out how do we best move forward as we talk about accessible voting, as it's not a problem that's going away, but as as the needs of our community that will need accessible voting is growing, it's kind of that constant question of how we move forward. And so as stated before, Clemson University is a research institution. So as part of this collaboration, our job was to do research. And that's a term that I will kind of beat in over and over again because there's often a confusion as to what Clemson does in this endeavor. And there's always kind of, when we talk about the tools that we've developed, it's like, oh, you guys are vendors? Like, no, we do research. Oh, are you an advocate group? No, we do research. So just kind of that constant iteration, we do research. Pay attention, there's a pop quiz at the end. All right, so long before we got to this grant, our team started working in this space about 10 years ago. Some of our team members attended a conference, and at the conference they stated that there'll never be a time where everyone, regardless of ability or disability, can vote on one machine. Our students saw this as a challenge, and thus began an undertaking a journey that birthed into what we now call Prime 3. Prime 3 is a premier voting technology. We call it the third generation of voting. When you think of papers, first generation, DRE is the second generation, and Prime 3 is third. It's a software that allows us to scientifically test and measure what would make voting better for people regardless of ability or disability. So if you think about some challenges that you as election officials face, in your day-to-day basis, as your elections kind of come about, we look at those challenges and we think of how can we design solutions for those. We, as a research institution, we have the freedom to test these ideas without worrying about how it will impact our bottom line. So if it works, great. The public domain benefits and everyone's happy. If it doesn't work, our students learn something. So either way, we don't lose. And for this, we're kind of at the prime group to kind of look at unique problems. So as I go through this presentation, think about some of the things that you've come in here with questions that have plagued you that you haven't seen addressed. Bring that to us, and those are the type of things we want to hear and we want to think of. How can we solve that? We were actually at the FCC last week, and someone asked, why is it we never put captions in our voting system? We was like, in 10 years, no one's asked that. That's an interesting question. We'll get back to you. And so those are the kind of things that people kind of come to us and we're like, that's a great question. Let's try it. Because we have nothing to lose and it's a wonderful learning experience for us. So next what I'm going to show you is a video that kind of takes you through how Prime 3 works. Now after the video, I will talk through the individual pieces about Prime 3 and go a little more in depth about it, but this will kind of summarize really quickly how it operates.
With a single sheet of paper. So I'm going to put that blank piece of paper into the printer, and I will begin the voting process. And you will see me vote with my voice touching the screen and also using a switch.
Start voting. Say vote.
Vote.
Selected. Start voting. There are 9 contests for voting. To vote by party, say vote. Selected. Vote by party. You are voting by party. There are 9 parties. To vote for the blue party, say vote. Selected. The blue party. To go to the next contest, say vote.
Vote.
To review your ballot, selected. Proposition 1. You are voting for Proposition 1. There are selected. Governor. You are voting. You have selected to write in a candidate name by selected. 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 France. You have selected. France J. You have selected. Selected. CKSON. You have selected. Governor. You are voting for governor. You have selected France Jackson. To vote for Amendment 1, ballot measure 1 selected. Amendment 1. Selected. Reject. To review your ballot, say vote. Selected. This is your ballot summary. You have voted in all 8 contests. You selected. Lieutenant Governor. You are voting for Lieutenant Governor. Selected. Anthony Parks. Selected. Review my ballot. Thank you. Your ballot is being printed.
Here's my ballot. As you can see, it only contains the individuals and selections I made in the contest. So there's no ambiguity about whom I voted for. Now this ballot will go into the ballot box, where then it will be later scanned using optical character recognition and tally.
Here's the QR code of your ballot. You should print or save this code.
So that's the QR code. So you would ask, what can I do with this? So now I did this at home, and when election day comes, I will actually go to the precinct and I show up to vote. And when I do so, they will bring up prime 3 and it will work as follows.
You have voted in all 8 contests. Thank you. Your ballot is being printed.
So now in the precinct, I brought my QR code, and you see how much faster that was in voting, and it print the actual options that I had.
Starting off, Prime 3 is a multimodal system. So one of the modalities you can vote is voters can, or multimodal interaction, it provides multimodal interaction. So you can vote by touching the screen, you can vote by voice, you can vote by just blowing into the microphone. So if a person has like a speech impediment or difficulty speaking, they can just blow into the microphone when prompted to, and that will also be recorded as a vote. Now the sensitivity level of the microphone is always a question people ask, like, well, what about the background noises? It adjusts to the background noises, and so it'll adjust to the environment that it's in to recognize when the voter is casting a vote. So when you think about like the visual, Prime 3, like in that system, and sometimes when we do our testing, we use like large touchscreen tablets, but it can also be an all-in-one system. As I said before, Prime 3 is software, so therefore it's system independent. So regardless of, you can put it on whatever hardware you choose. We have large fonts, we have a choice of images or no images, touchable names. Voters touch the screen to make the selection. The confirmation is given visual and verbal. The ballot layout that you see that's given, it produces one race per screen to reduce ambiguity and confusion for those that have like cognitive disabilities. And the voter confirms the ballot twice before it's recorded. Also with Prime 3, you have the choice of using the haptic switch, the rockers, large texturized on buttons, so you know the difference between the select and the next options. The voter pressed the button to make their selection, and again, the confirmation is giving verbal and visually. Verbally, with Prime 3, what we use is a headset that has a microphone. This allows the voter to speak to the system, and their conversation is confidential. So as you notice, as he went through Prime 3, there was never a time when he said, I'm voting for candidate XYZ, but the response to the system was vote. So the system will say, to vote for Juan Gilbert, please say vote. And so therefore, passerbyers, all they will ever hear was vote. And you can never there is always a sense of independence and security that's given during that course of voting, because there's never a time where they will actually verbalize who they're voting for. The system's speech can be pre-recorded or computer generated or both. And like I said, the embedded microphone will receive various methods of vote. So you can say, there's times we've had people use Prime 3 and it's like, I want to vote for, Juan Gilbert. And if you say that or you into the system, it's all recorded at the same as the voters casting their vote. So again, the confirmation is given verbal. As such, Prime 3 is one of the world's most accessible voting technology for those sighted, blind, deaf, illiterate, sighted and blind, physical disabilities, limited and no use of hands, for example, military wounded, and the elderly. All these voters can vote privately and independently on the same system. So one of the questions we also get about Prime 3 is security. If you think about Prime 3, because Prime 3 is electronic voting system, however, we produce a paper ballot. Essentially, Prime 3 is no more than a ballot marking device. So if you break it down in the simplest form, Prime 3 is a fancy pen, where we produce a paper ballot that goes into your ballot box just like any other paper ballot. However, your ballots are marked electronically. We're clear on that? Remember, there's a pop quiz. All right, so Prime 3, we have voter verified ballots, where the ballots printed contains only the selection for the race. So as you can see in the ballot that's shown here and the one that he showed in the video, it prints the race, president, vice president, and then the candidate that was selected to reduce ambiguity of what was selected. We use OCR to do the tallying of the ballots, which is optical character recognition. And optical character recognition reads left to right, just like a human reader. And so it'll go line by line and do the tallying of the ballots. One of the things we often hear that OCR isn't very accurate. So with that, we created our own process, which is informed our OCR, which goes back in and it does the correction of your standard OCR process. But there's times we hear like, that's great, but we don't really want to use OCR. We want to use our existing optical scan ballots. And with the optical scan ballot systems, and so therefore we can also produce an optical scan ballot with Prime 3 that can be read using your optical scan scanners that are currently in existence. So you have an option with that with Prime 3. So in Prime 3, we've used it in several different elections. National Society of Black Engineers have used Prime 3 since 2008 in their national elections. National Council on Independent Living has used Prime 3. The presidential mock elections at Auburn University, Prime 3 was used. In the state of Oregon, as we heard before, is a mail-in state. And so they use Prime 3 in their rehab centers and independent living centers. In their 2012 presidential primary election. Tongue-tied today. Also, self-advocates for becoming empowered, as you saw the video on earlier, use Prime 3, and Clemson Elementary School used Prime 3. Now, the interesting thing about these two elections was because these populations, we added images to the ballots. As Tim mentioned in his presentation, images assist people with cognitive disabilities decipher information. However, with our elementary school election, there was a question of illiteracy because our election involved K through fifth graders. that were voting. And in both groups, you couldn't tell who had a disability, who didn't, who was illiterate, and who wasn't, because everyone was able to vote independently on the same systems. And there were times you would hear one and confirming their ballots, like they would point at the ballot and say, yes, that's the person I voted for. But other than that, like they're saying it's you, there was never an indication during the course of the voting process what disability or limitations the voter had. And that was very interesting watching that process play out. In April 1st, Wisconsin will be using Prime 3 in their election in 2 different counties. And what's interesting about this particular election is they're doing it all independent of our team. And so in the prior elections, we kind of go and we assist the process, but Wisconsin was like, you guys can come as observers, but we want it. We want to do it all on our own. So they have the software, they've gotten their own hardware where they've kind of rented from their state vendors, and they've trained their poll workers, and they're just going in. So this is gonna be a really exciting process for us to kind of watch it play through, whereas we're completely hands-off in this process, and we're just kind of watching them use it. And so this will be really interesting to kind of watch played out. So in addition to the Prime 3 system in itself, the Prime 3 team has several different endeavors that we've taken on that I'll talk to you a little bit about. One of the things that we've done is we've looked at balloting, and you saw a bit of that in the video, and it was also featured in the Presidential Commission report. And the question that brought on balloting was, can we make voting faster and more accurate? And so we've seen different things that there's been different reasons, as you as the election officials know more so than I, that slows down the voting process. But the question sometimes is, with the varying lengths in ballots and the unfamiliarity of people with the terminologies, it takes people sometimes a little bit longer to kind of go through the ballots. So the question is, how do we speed up this process? And so we came up with balloting. And with balloting, we produced the QR codes. And so basically the way balloting works is you get a ballot at home and you complete your ballot at home. You take as much time as you need to. When you completed your ballot, it produces a QR code. You go to your voting precinct with the QR code, and all you have to do is scan it in. Once we have a scanner at each voting booth, you scan in the QR code, it pulls up the review screen. Now, with the review screen, you can go back and say, like, while you're driving over to the precinct, you'd be like, you know, on Amendment 2, I changed my mind. I think I want to be a no. Or on this particular candidate, whatever changes you want to make, you're not committed to that yet until the ballot is printed, because that's the only thing that's recorded when using a Prime 3 system. So when you go to your voting precinct, you scan in your QR code, you make any changes you need to, and then you hit submit, and then you cast your ballot by printing it out and putting it in a ballot box. So then the question comes up of coercion, like what if someone tries to buy your vote? Well, we figured this is a great money-making opportunity for you. You take their money, you go in, and you vote the way you want to, because again, the QR code is not the ballot. It's just bringing you up a review screen. So if someone's in the parking lot like, hey, you know, I give you this QR code and $20, will you vote this way? Say, sure, you got $20, lunch for 2 days, and you go in there and you still vote the way you want to. So there's different ways that we can kind of see this, or we envision this being played out in the future. With this methodology, we ran a study. In our balloting study, we used the Broward County Broward County ballot from 2012. And as Doug was mentioning before, it was the one that had these 12 long amendments, 750 words, etc. So you can imagine the complexity of this ballot. So in this study, we did 3 conditions. We did it as a paper ballot using Prime 3 and the balloting method that I just described to you. So under the paper ballot, it took the voter 4.5 minutes to cast their ballots, to go through all the different amendments, candidates, etc. Using Prime 3, it took 3.8 minutes per ballot. Using the balloting methodology, 48 seconds. And this makes sense if you think about it, because all you're doing is come in the precinct, scan, review, submit. Not much, but if you think about how much we save on time, because for some people, I mean, we would like to believe that everyone has studied their ballots thoroughly before coming into the precinct. But there are many times people just haven't done that, and they come in there and they're seeing things for the first time, or whatever issues may arise, or even if you think about the needs of the communities with disabilities, they need that extra time. And so giving them a method where they can take as much time as they need to review their ballot, to cast their ballots, review all the information, and come in, and all you have to do is scan, submit. It makes sense how this can be effective. One of the other things that we've also done is we took a stab at televoting, and this was an effort to address the needs of our military communities, our overseas military communities. And so that has been something that has kind of come up in the media several times where, especially with the last presidential election, where there was a lot of talk about these ballots not making it back in time, and it sends this message to our soldiers: you can die for our country, but you can't vote for it. And so the question was, what do we do to address that? So we designed a methodology as a proof of concept, and that right now we're in the process of working on a pilot that will happen in the next couple of months. So I'll kind of walk you through how televoting works. Basically, you have a precinct here, the soldier's home precinct, that we have your election officials in the precinct here.
You put in the Board of Elections office.
Correct. You have the soldier on their base. They pull up the Prime 3 system electronically, and they complete their ballot. When they complete their ballot, they hit submit, and from there they enter a queue. In the queue, there are election official at their home in their home counties that they connect with. This will happen through video, and so there will be a video feed where they can see the election official, and the election official can see them. And with that, the election official come on and say, "Hi, are you ready to to cast your ballot?" The voter says, "Yes, I'm ready to cast my ballot," and the election official will hit a button. When she hits that button, the ballot will print in the home precinct. Now, we have designed a hands-free paper printing method that you don't see here because it was prior to me putting this together, but actually we haven't released it yet. It's due to release in May, so I can't show it just yet. But basically the idea is the ballot prints through our hands-free printing system where the soldier can see the ballot. The soldier can see their ballot, but the election official can't. So it's printed like face down, and there's a camera facing the ballot where it's viewable for the soldier. And so she says, "Is this your ballot?" He says, "Yes." What she then does is kind of stick a number under it. It's like, "Can you see this number? What number do you see?" What we do this to make sure that the feed to the soldier is not being interfered or interrupted, and that they can verify that this is a live feed. And so for someone to hack this system, there's several different areas you would have to be able to get into, in additional to the liveness test that we have there. And so if you kind of think about it, it's kind of, when you see those old movies, and it's like a bad example, but when you see those old movies and you see someone's taken hostage and they hold up like a newspaper with the date on it, and that's kind of what that goal is, where you see that this is present time and it's happening in real time. And so once he says, "Yes, that's my ballot. Yes, I see the number," the ballot then, she hits a button and the ballot goes straight into the ballot box. And so with that, there's several different things. There's just several different ways that we can kind of think about how this can move forward. However, it's our attempt of how do you put forth a solution where soldiers' ballots can be counted just like everyone else in a timely fashion that provides them the same rights and access. So finally, the last system that that I'll talk to you about is to address voting lines. And so voting lines is, again, another issue that has come up a lot in the media. And again, looking at Florida, which is my home state, so I pull a lot of great examples from there, because let's face it, we're great at a lot of things. Voting isn't one of them. And we saw from the last presidential election, we saw the 2-hour lines, and not just Florida, but Virginia and a lot of other places. How do we address these long voting lines? And so the concept that we came up with is called Voter Pass. And so Voter Pass, if you think about it from the perspective of, it's no different than making like a dinner reservation. Or if you think about a toll booth, where you have, when you go through your toll lanes, you have your regular lanes and you kind of have your express lanes. Or have you guys ever been to Disney and they have Fast Pass at Disney? it's a lot of the same idea. So the way FastPass at Disney or any of these theme parks work is you kind of get to the theme park, you go to your FastPass line, and they assign you a time. So come back to ride this ride between 3:45, 4:45. So then you go play around in the park, you know, do your thing, you come back, and you see these long lines revolving around the park, and it's like, sucks for you, I'm going to the front, I got my FastPass. And so it's kind of like the same idea that we've made use for Voter Pass. And so the way Voter Pass works is that you basically bypass the lines where you can make a reservation, you can make an appointment to vote. And so instead of coming during peak time at noon or when everyone else comes, you set a time, and when you come to the voting precinct, you have your Voter Pass line and your regular line. In your Voter Pass line, you've already been verified by the system, so we imagine it where there'll be like a poll worker or someone standing there with like a tablet that'll have a pre-populated list of who's set to vote during that half-hour increment. Your name's on the list, you hop in line, and you bypass the line, and you go forward, and you cast your vote. And so that's generally the idea of the way Voter Pass will work. And we've actually heard some really interesting things from election officials that we've been talking about Voter Pass in ways that they see it'll be beneficial. For example, with Voter Pass, the way we populate Voter Pass, the way Voter Pass is designed is in order for us to get an idea of how many time slots your precinct can accommodate, we have an algorithm where we kind of know what resources you need. Well, in understanding that, we also can determine how many people your precinct can accommodate for the day. And what's that? That's a very interesting situation, because if you know, it gives you a way of knowing before Election Day, in your, for this precinct, you're slated for X amount of people, but you can only handle Y. Then you know you can make some accommodations prior to. And so there's a lot of other benefits that come out of this kind of tool. So that's kind of in a nutshell some of the things that we've been able to do as a research institution is kind of look at these different problems either through the media or talking to you election officials that have come about, and we've been able to kind of take to our drawing board and see what kind of solutions we can implement. So, time for the pop quiz. Research. True or false? Is Prime 3 a research tool? Awesome! You guys are like the first group that everyone got this right. You'll be amazed. How much does Prime 3 cost? Oh, y'all a little hesitant. What? It is free. Prime 3 is free. So, some things to remember. Let's see if you get these right. Are we a vendor? No. We are not a vendor. We are a research institute. Prime 3, you can only run it on certain platforms, or is it system independent? System independent. It's just software. All we are is software. Put it on your phone, put it on your laptop, put it on your tablet, put it on whatever electronic device you feel that you can make this run, and go at it. Prime 3, we're here to help you. True. We're just a research team here to help you. So bring us your questions, your comments, your thoughts, and we'll see what we can do with it. Questions, comments, concerns, cries of outrage.
What happens if the QR code is misplaced by the voter?
You can, so there's several different places. You can, because it's not an official ballot, you can just do it again. So you can just go through the process and generate a new one. Because no QR code is necessarily unique. It's more of once you scan it and you cast your actual ballot, that's your actual, that's what's actually cast, the ballot that goes into the ballot box.
So you keep it recorded for that particular voter. You know that that voter has only voted once.
No, because the QR code is not recorded for any particular voter. The only thing that is recorded is the ballot that's printed and that goes into the ballot box.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm leaving the board, the precinct, and I drop my QR code on the floor, or I hand my QR code to somebody outside. Is somebody else going to be able to pick that up and get a ballot?
Yes. The QR code is not unique in itself. So if me and someone else in the same county, in the same district, we vote exactly the same way, our QR codes will read the exact same way. And the QR codes, they're not closed. So if anyone with a QR scanner can scan a QR code at any time, and you can see the information that's in it. It's not proprietary, it's not unique to the voter. It's when you scan it in to Prime 3 and you actually cast that ballot, that printed ballot is what's unique to the voter, and that's the stuff that goes into the ballot box. The QR code is open, and it will be very similar. If someone else decides to pick it up and scan it, and so we kind of envision with the QR codes that people, like, for example, in places that allow you to vote by party, you'll have T-shirts like, hey, vote for this party with a big QR code, and anyone can scan it at any point in time and see the information that's in that QR code.
Right. So the protection against double voting is that the person has to be cleared by the poll workers.
Right, that process doesn't change. You still go through, you're cleared by your poll workers at your precinct, and you go through, so the QR code is just kind of, if you think about it from the sense of your sample ballots, but there's so many errors that can occur in copying over from a sample ballot. It's a similar idea, but you're scanning in that sample ballot to make it your official ballot once you print it.
And I have one other question. On the on your algorithm that will project usage, has that been tested against any real elections?
Not yet. We're in the process of testing. We've had some strange luck. The county that we were supposed to test it in, the official that we were working with to do that testing his position was terminated as we were setting that up. So we have to find a new collaborator to actually do that testing, but we're still in the midst of, we've done some internal testing, but we haven't tested an actual election yet.
Out of curiosity, so can someone take the QR code, right? Mm-hmm. Print it twice, and I know the scanner can scan your ballot whether you put it face side up or face down. So could I take 2 ballots like this and put it in the scanner counts it twice?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. Which scanner would you be speaking of?
When we use scanners in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can put the ballot anyway and it would scan. So I'm thinking, if you take the QR code because you get to print your stuff and you print 2 ballots, because at home in Connecticut, we actually hand you a ballot.
Mm-hmm.
You have that code. Is there a possibility you can print more than 1 ballot?
No. Again, the QR code just scans into the system, but the Prime 3 system will only print one ballot. So the QR code, you scan it in, it brings you up to the review screen, and once you hit print, it prints that 1 ballot.
But can you take that same...
Scan it, it doesn't cast the vote.
No, I know. But for us, when you scan it, then you'd have to take the ballot to a scanner. Our scanner scans both face up, face down. But you just said if the QR code fails, somebody else could take it and go vote. So couldn't I just take that and re-vote again? No?
So think about the way your voting precinct is set up. The only people authorized to go back there are the people who've already been verified, right? So if I pick up a QR code and scan it in, I'm still only allowed to cast my 1 ballot. So regardless of what I use as information to inform me on how I'm casting that ballot, I'm still only producing 1 ballot. And so my ballot that is printed, that 1 ballot, because Prime 3, we also work with our printers, we tend to do, it depends upon how your precinct works. I'm assuming when you give them a paper ballot, you're handing them 1 sheet of paper, right? So they can only produce 1 ballot because they don't have another sheet of paper to print on other than the one that you've given them. So once they scan it in, mark their ballots or make changes, it prints still just that 1 ballot.
Because you give them 1 sheet of paper.
Right.
Okay. Because I was wondering if the
No,
printer
that
has
part of the
more than
process
one.
does not change, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Can you tell us a little bit more, I guess, about, I mean, there's probably some flexibility, but some more of the details or flesh out a little bit of how the voter pass thing would work? And I know often how that might work at an amusement park, but in terms of, you know, when people would be able to reserve such a time, what might happen if they come outside that time? You know, I don't want to prejudge. I know there's some people that have concerns, but I'm interested in conceptually what that might look like.
Yeah, so we have a lot of flexibility with any of the tools that we design on how you think it will be best used in your precincts or in your voting districts. But conceptually, the way we thought of it thus far is either a week or two before your voting day, the system is open. People can make their reservations either through computer or phone by calling into the system. So, like I said, like making a dinner reservation is the simplicity of the way the system should work. And so making it available, or the system can be open as early as you deem it necessary. And once that system's open, they can kind of make their appointments according. Now, the appointments are for slots, so it's not necessarily you have to be there at 3, but you have a window. So just like that fast pass, it's kind of like you have this window. You have this window of, it depends upon your precinct and how you want to scale it to accommodate your voters, and also the length of your ballot and things, and those different natures will determine the time frame of that window. But anywhere from, if you think about it, it could be like, for example, a half an hour window between 3 and 3:30 is your window to show up, and that's your appointment slot. So as long as you show up in that window. If you miss that window, it's just like you miss any other appointment, you get to the line. And that's pretty much the idea of it.
Hi. So along those lines of the fast pass, what did you call it again?
Voter pass?
Voter pass, yeah. Did you think about going another route and changing the layout of the polling place or the waiting area, similar to what happens at like a DMV? When you're waiting for your driver's license, you pick a number and you sit, and there's rows of chairs and everybody's seated comfortably while they wait instead of waiting in line, and then a number shows up and then you can go vote. I don't know if anyone's thought of that, but.
So ideally with the voter pass, because like I said, you should have 2 lines. You have your regular line and a voter pass line. There should be no waiting. You should be able to come in, because again, we've pre-calculated how many people you can accommodate at set time. And so once you show up at set time, you should be able to just expedite and go straight through the process. Again, we don't dictate of the layout of a voting precinct or anything of that nature. That is up to the election officials to determine. We just want to make the tools available for you to best use how you see fit within your precincts.
Could an election office help deal with the lines by setting it up so that you can use Vote Pass and you get an appointment in the window of, say, 10 o'clock to 3, but you can't make a pre-appointment for the morning rush or the late in the day rush?
Yes. So as you sit, we have an administrative page where you would set up the voter pass, and you put in your start times and closing times of when you want voter pass used at your precinct. And so that, based upon that, that's what we'll use for our calculations.
So an election office, in effect, has a tool to say to voters, if you don't want to wait, come inside these timeframes.
Yeah. And that's one of the flexibilities with the tool. You can kind of, again, customize it the way you see fit for your voting districts.
This question actually goes back to the voting. Thanks. The voting software itself, is it pretty generic as far as programming? How many offices can you actually program in? How many candidates can you associate with those offices? Is there a separate section for proposition questions, referenda questions? I saw that the guy was doing a write-in. You know, is there a way to link write-ins to each office? I'm interested in actually how the software looks.
So Prime 3 is open source, and with that, there's kind of like the base of Prime 3 that you can customize. So if the question of how many offices, as many as you want, how many propositions, as many as you need, and with that, all of that is customized based upon your needs.
With the
Is that built into the system, or can you mess around with it? Can
So font size is one of those things that it's currently set to, based off of research, what's best for the users that you can still see the ballot all in one screen. You can adjust the view of the font size based off the way you can adjust it from your system. So you know how you normally increase font size on any electronic system to make the screen bigger? That is allowed, but the font size itself, we tend not to do much customization in that because font size, the colors that we've used, things of that nature, that is set because from the research that we've done, it's what we can best accommodate users of ability, disability with our current system.
I have a couple of questions and comments about the voter pass. In terms of logging into the system to get your initial voter pass, is there any way or any sort of consideration to ensure that there's no sort of like spamming into it so that if the voter has to enter in their own unique identifiers as opposed to someone just taking up all the available numbers?
To access voter
Right.
pass, you need to put in your voter registration number. And so therefore, we need to, with that, we verify you are a registered voter for this particular precinct before you can reserve a slot there.
And the other piece I had for that was that if, and I guess this goes in a little bit more of technology and what you were saying about being a research institution, that if I am using voter pass and I know that my precinct here is over, booked at a certain point, maybe voter pass can be used to say, well, this precinct over here doesn't have as many voters, and you should go there to basically get your ballot if things are going to be online to basically print ballots anywhere.
Well, that really just depends on your voting districts, because some places don't allow that. You can only vote at one precinct. But if you do have, for example, I know in some places, especially during early voting, you can vote at any precinct in the county. Yeah, we do have that flexibility.
So just a
However, currently, it really just depends on you. With Voter Pass, we've kind of talked about partnering with ES&S, and they have a system that kind of tell you what's going on geographically with the precincts in those areas. And so there's a lot of flexibility in that area.
This relates to the voter pass. For polling places with no internet connection, how do polling places keep up to date with those individuals who have signed up for a specific time?
So with that, we have several solutions that we've kind of explored thus far. One is collaborating with Verizon, who have, we've talked about them providing a platform, so we do have that network support for that, but also we can also have a pre-populated list generated because, let me just do that. A pre-populated list generated so you can already know, because the slots, once, say for example, if your system's been open like a week or so prior to elections, then you already know who's, one of the thoughts is you can have a cutoff time. So say like the day before is the last day, anyone can reserve a slot, and then you have a pre-generated list so you know who to expect at what time slots. So there's several different ways to kind of get around various limitations upon our precincts. Like I said, it's just more of a, what are some ways that we can do to kind of alleviate these long lines?
So what sort of things do you have in place, and I guess this is more of a, if I see someone walking into the polling place and I've been standing there for an hour and they've walked in, I'm not going to know that they got a voter pass. So how do I say, hey, you're cutting the line, or they're walking around with something else?
Well, so there's several different ways that we've we've heard from election officials of how that can be done. In one sense, it could almost be like advertising for a voter pass, right? Where you're kind of standing there, it's like, well, it's not the same line, right? So they go into a separate line. It's just like anytime you see an express lane, how they get there, right? So it's kind of like, oh, that's a voter pass line. Well, again, and this is for places that would have connectivity that the system can kind of update and refresh. But say I'm standing in there, I see this person go past the line, I hear about this voter pass, there's a number, call the number, and it's like there's availability for the current time slot, make my reservation, hop out of this line to the voter pass line, see you guys later. So there are several different ways that it can still be used in that capacity. Anything else? Awesome, thank you guys.